Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange McCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuity Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. So I have your intro, and the last time we chatted, we were talking about the thought process of doing an episode around the socioeconomic impacts on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Does that still trend for you, or what are you thinking? I'm flexible.
Yeah, I was thinking like business trends 2024 relative to environmental, social, and governments, but mainly social and governments because that's
ESG.
primarily where I work. But yeah, the social impacts of, I mean, like I'm more of a business strategist, so
Mhm.
I would say, we can talk about what leaders need, like the types of skills that they need this year in order to be able to manage, the numerous priorities that they have.
Mhm.
If that's up your alley, we can talk about, like, I would say generalizing on business trends, maybe to start, and what you're
Yes.
seeing and what I'm seeing.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and like, do you want me to kind of give you a sneak peek into sort of my mindset on this stuff?
Yeah,
Or okay.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this year, I mean, it's a tough economic climate right now, not just for small businesses and medium-sized businesses, but also for large enterprise and for government.
Mhm.
Budgets are being cut like crazy. They're figuring out where to cut the fat, as it were, and it's creating a climate of fear, I think, in a lot of organizations and with a lot of people. And with fear comes a whole host of, it's like a runaway train of, these behaviors that we're starting to see again pop up in the workplace.
Mhm.
Particularly with leaders and managers as they're like crunched between, competing priorities and competing stakeholders.
Yes.
So, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that as a business leader, as an owner? And what do you need to really remember, as you're making decisions, as you're making requests of your team? What are the lenses you need to look through to make
Mm.
sure you're balancing that purpose and profit, making sure you're balancing the health and wellness of your team with your financial results?
I love how you word things. The way that you utilize the English language, I can always picture and feel exactly what you're speaking to. So thank you for that. Purpose and profit. I love those words. Um, yeah, I love this. So when you're out in the market currently right now,
Mhm.
what are you seeing as those large economic trends?
Right. The large economic trends in the workplace. So when I'm working with clients, a lot of our clients are looking for, funding,
Mm-hmm.
right? Funding for projects. And so whether that's through, their bank financing, whether that's through grants, whether they're looking for other like new lines of business and like, for example, an RFP line of business, they're looking to go out and, find RFPs and respond to RFPs.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're thinking about business development in terms of like sales, like how do we enhance our sales teams? Everything right now, everything that I'm seeing is integrating social and governance and often environmental and sustainability types of goals. So if you're looking for funding from anyone, they're more likely to fund companies or finance companies that are integrating ESG into their ecosystem, however it
Mm-hmm.
looks, right? And
Mm-hmm.
really demonstrating, what are your goals relative to social and governance? And if it's an environmental type of project, like a climate related project, or like energy types of projects, those are being prioritized a lot of the time over, projects that are maybe just like focusing on a specific niche customer and without anything else integrated. So
Right.
I would say, like, doesn't matter what your project is or what your business is, find ways to integrate environmental, social, and governance, social goals relative to like diversity, equity, and inclusion or
Mm-hmm.
accessibility
Mm-hmm.
into what you're doing. So it doesn't mean it's overpowering everything, but how are you, benchmarking and creating goals relative to some of these things,
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
thinking about the impact. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how could companies go about this? Because there's so many articles, definitions, thought processes as to what ESG should be or not be based on the niche market, the size of an organization, if they're government, non-government, etc. I guess plain language for all of our listeners out there, how do you feel would be the not the easiest approach, but the most organic approach when you say wrap it into your business model? What does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, I always like to start with what can we do in our internal community, you know?
Mm,
So what are we're starting with at home? What can we do to practice and demonstrate some of these things at home in our businesses today,
right.
right? Rather than trying to change the world, which, is a valid goal for some businesses, you can change your internal community first and just start there.
Mm-hmm.
So starting to like practice what you preach, really thinking about like how does my brand align with my culture?
Mm-hmm.
Because our brand is the digital first impression, the first impressions of our company and what people think about us in the world. How are people talking about us behind our backs, And then our culture is really how are we demonstrating those brand ideals, the brand vision, the brand values internally. So let's really think about that. It's not a
Oh.
box checking exercise. It's not, we're not talking about, just like an external, um, like our external brand. We're talking about like what's inside of us. And
Mm-hmm.
so then when your future team members join your organization, you know that they're feeling a sense of alignment. You are who
Mm-hmm.
you say you are.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that's
start there.
important. That's important
Mhm.
these days. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir when I talk to you, Erin.
I
It's
know.
really still an employee market whereby, I don't think the trend of an employee interviewing an employer just as much as an employer interviewing an employee is going to go away. If anything, I guess candidates or individuals being interviewed are going to want to know more things about organizations, even including the ESG side of things.
Mhm. Yeah, and we need to build that into everything that we do,
Right.
right? So it's like, I work with a lot of organizations and they don't have necessarily a really cohesive vision, mission, values. And we know that that is the most important place to start because that's where your communication flows out from. The
Yes.
goals of the entire organization and in terms of how they're spending their time, how they're making decisions, it flows outwards from that vision, mission, values. And that's why so many like business strategists, coaches, executive leaders who are like involved in this space um, focus on that first. I mean, you know that obviously. But then how do you actually use that and integrate that so that everyone in your organization knows
Mm,
exactly where you're going, why you're doing it, who's doing what, where, when, why, how, like all of the questions, right? And that
definitely.
feels aligned and integrated with everything else that you're doing.
Oftentimes what I'm seeing in the market from a leadership lens is is not so much, resistance around the idea of ESG or the concept, but rather wrapping our minds around how do I integrate that in my daily life? How do I integrate
Mhm.
that in how I operate as a leader? What advice would you have to give your clients or potential clients in that area?
Values, right? So I preach about values nonstop. So your organizational values, I think, should be the same as your external values that your clients see should be the same values that you're embodying in the workplace,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not just about the words. And this is where a lot of people stop is like, what is the word that we're using? Every single person has a different definition of what that means.
Right.
every single person, if you put a list, and this has happened to a few of my clients, this specific story, if you put your values in a list 1 through 5, and your number 3 value is sustainability, what does that mean? Because it means different thing to everyone. I like sustainability in terms of my definition is the balance of purpose and profit.
Right.
How are we balancing these two ideas and trying to hold them simultaneously and lightly, so that we know that we're financially sustainable and we're sustainable in a human sense, right?
I think that's a fantastic story because what I'm hearing, or I guess the story I'm telling myself, is that no longer is it enough just to have core values. Rather, you need to have things that substantiate those core values, that make it abundantly clear to everybody at all levels within your organization what that value means and what's expected to be carried out via that value.
100%. Yeah. Are we getting into the podcast now? I feel like we're actually doing
Yeah,
this.
we are, definitely.
I mean, we could use that content somewhere, probably.
Absolutely. No, I did it on purpose because I've been trying this new thing, Erin, where I've been finding that podcast guests are a lot more authentic, jumping in, and then I pick the right time kind of to pause, do the introduction, then go back to it. I've been
Nice.
finding, because we're up over like 150 episodes now, I've been finding
Wow. Well
that
done.
I've been finding that, if I do like the formal green room thing, the introduction, it's almost like I get a different version of that person, which is still amazing and beautiful, but I don't want to keep the amazing personality of Erin Patchell to myself. I want to be able to share it with everybody else.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Let's dive in.
So diving in formally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I should introduce you to everyone, Erin, and wanting to really set this up for success. Erin is a strong strategist when it comes to business development, leadership coaching, with her own company, Positivist Group. She advocates with a strong focus on the balance of purpose, profit, and a special focus on autonomy and agility, which we've already kind of gleaned tones of that as we've been chatting. She guides business owners and leaders to blend discipline and creativity to build more sustainable organizational culture and generate stronger financial results. I like that you impact the bottom line there, Erin. She also is the host of the podcast Weirdos in the Workplace, which I've had the honor of being on. It was so fun and it's informative. So you have to subscribe to her podcast, which basically explores how authenticity, transparency, passion, and purpose can transform people and culture and build healthier, diverse organizations. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks so much, Ange, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
I love chatting with you.
Yeah, I always feel like when Erin, when your presence, whether it's virtual or in person, you leave people in a better place than where they've been moments before speaking with you. Honestly,
You.
yeah,
Oh,
you're just
I really appreciate it.
you're amazing at what you do, and I love following your journey, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that came up for me when we started talking about this ESG piece is how do we adapt for so many generations within the workplace?
Oh my goodness, that is something. So to me, it all goes back to empathy, and as an emotional intelligence practitioner, you know all about empathy. We know that empathy is the first step in the design thinking process,
Yes.
right? And so empathy, really trying to go deep and understand another person from a place of respect and profound um, empathy, I'm using that word again, but just a really deep understanding, an emotional understanding of another person and trying to put yourself into their shoes, right? And so I think that's where we always need to start when it comes to thinking about any challenge, not just multi-generational challenges.
Yes.
And there are, and I think it's okay to say this, there are very big differences between the baby boomer generation to the Gen X, to the the millennial, to the Gen Z, and beyond. What's under Gen Z? I'm not even sure. As a mom, yeah, I'm a
I'm having a
mom
brain
raised.
freeze myself. I was like, ah.
I, oh, I'll have to look that up. Gen Z, Gen Y, I guess.
I think so.
Yeah, probably. That makes sense. So, I mean, I'm a elder millennial, they call me,
Yes.
raising Gen Z children. And I've had people on my team who are of every single age group that I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can approach things with empathy and wanting to learn, with an open mind, having that beginner mindset,
Yes.
and trying to put a back seat on your own biases and your own initial reactions,
Mm-hmm.
that initial conflict reaction. If you can just take I learned this from my son's hockey, and I know you're a hockey coach too, I believe, right? I'm
I
not
am.
a hockey coach, but hockey parent here. One thing we learned back when the kids were little was the 24-hour rule. You know,
Yep.
you don't talk to the coach. If you have a problem, leave it 24 hours, sleep on it. If there's some like a conflict or something, conflicting that comes up, like a challenge by, take a breath, 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've actually used that many times, and it gives you an opportunity to reflect on the truth, right?
Yes.
And what is the truth?
Mm-hmm.
What is the truth? Well, guess what? There's no one truth. And so what my truth is might be very different from somebody else's truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, really thinking about what is the truth in the scenario, what are the different truths, and how can we really think about adapting to other people in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to team culture, we were talking about vision, mission, values, and how important that is, and where to start with environmental, social, and governance. And I suggested maybe starting at home would be a good idea, practicing what you preach, putting your money where your mouth is.
Mm-hmm.
Team norms are so important. And so trying to find a flexible model that the people in your organization can live with. And it's not about consensus,
Mm-hmm.
it's about what can people live with. This is the
Mm-hmm.
way I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The sense that I'm getting, Erin, is when it comes to ESG, it's understanding what that definition means to your organization,
Mm,
what is within your reach, understanding that you're not going to solve every problem within the first year,
oh,
and being able to communicate those expectations with a human-centric approach to your team
mhm.
members, so that you're consistently graduating through kind of elevating your ESG within your organization first before even looking outwards.
And aligning it to your business goals, right? So it's really important. ESG is a extremely broad area.
Yes.
And so you don't have to change the world. You can just pick, one goal from maybe the UN 17 sustainability goals as an example that you want to demonstrate. And maybe it does mean like putting some of the profit into your business and reinvesting it into some kind of, social or wellness venture or something like that that's going to benefit either internal community or your external community.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be, just creating governance around and policies around what you believe is important in the workplace. And it just doesn't have to be a revolution. It can just be an evolution. It can just be a nudge, in the right direction. And that's okay. Or if you want to go even further, if you really want to, demonstrate to the world that this is something that you care about, there are certification processes like B Corp, as an example, that
Mm-hmm.
are very valuable and can give you a strategic advantage potentially, depending on, the type of work that you do. So really thinking about like, how are you benchmarking and measuring whatever it is that you decide to do, and
Mm-hmm.
taking just a baby step towards it,
Mm-hmm.
and then continuously reviewing it to see if it's working, and then growing it slowly from that little tiny spark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing. What do you see are some of the potential roadblocks with your current clients or, peers in the industry when we're thinking about ESG? Because as you're talking about it, I have like 10 questions per bucket. So like if I'm thinking that way as a business owner, I can only imagine how overwhelming it is. So yes, we need to look at structure and having a subject matter expertise like yourself in our back pocket or in our circle to ensure that we're untethering that. But I guess for the purpose of the podcast, help me understand if I'm a mid-sized organization and we're still in an economic downturn, how can I make sure that I'm still honoring the ESG portion and trends for my business to create that profit balance?
Right. Well, I mean, look at what you're already doing, right? Look at the systems that you already have. Every business has their own workflows, their own systems. What are you doing already? We're already doing recruiting. You know what I mean? We're already doing probably some form of onboarding or leadership development or coaching. A lot of businesses are doing something that they already have an initiative in their organization that they already are doing. So is it working? You know, is it focused on your highest priorities as a business? Is it focused on, what is the one thing that you want to do? So if it's, you want to balance purpose and profit, or if you want to build diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, if you've got, or, there's numerous other things, but just taking those as an example, have you built it into your onboarding process? Have you,
Right.
do you have the internal communications, like the posters on the wall, the emails? Are you taking just a little bit of time and energy? It doesn't have to be a lot of money. We don't have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into this. It can just be, what is one tiny thing that we can do to integrate something with our onboarding? What is a little thing that we can do to reframe our recruitment strategy so it's a little bit more inclusive and equitable, right? And then announcing that to the world. And I think the announcing that to the world thing is actually important, not because we are trying to build our brand, obviously, but it also builds accountability, so right, it's about building accountability. What are the tools that you need? What are the communication strategies? What are the management strategies that you need to build accountability to that goal? Is it governance? And a lot of the time it is, right? How often are we reviewing these policies? Is it literally in our calendars? Have we blocked the time to talk about this for 2 hours a year?
This is so I'm laughing because in my past life, as you know, I've been an HR practitioner. And when we start to talk about policy review, like people just like glaze over. But to your point, it's important because things change, especially looking at the speed of our economy these days, with tech changes, with AI changes, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so it kind of tickled my funny bone because there's some aspects that are super dry, I won't lie, with this endeavor of ESG, but it's understanding the value and the impact, because reviewing those policies, reviewing your structures, and ensuring that your leadership team has the proper skills to back your ESG policies up are, I would say, are the top three most important things. And I find it really interesting in what you're pointing out in a simplistic manner, which is needed, is what are you currently doing? What are some small tweaks for this year? And how are you celebrating it externally?
Totally.
Yes, it's a beautiful way to break it down.
Yeah. And it doesn't it doesn't have to be complicated. And personally, I get excited about policy review time every year. Just like I've learned to become excited about tax time every year. Like people, it's like we can change our mindset. We can. And I know because I have.
Pull me into the talent management strategy, the leadership strategy. I'm on board, but I've done a lot of policies in a past life. So I'll leave that excitement for you.
Yeah, it's just opening up the policies and looking at them and really thinking about like, does this make sense for us? Are we demonstrating this?
Right.
How have we rolled this out? Maybe we need to roll it back. Maybe it was too, a little bit too much for us at this stage of our,
Yes.
And I've done that myself. Like when I started Positivist Group, I was like, we're going to do everything perfectly. And like, we're going to have all these, I'm like, I'm one person right now. And then we became 2 and 3 and 4, but like, at the beginning, I was like, when I have my team, I'm going to do everything right. And then, I realized, what? No, that doesn't make sense for a small business. So let's roll it back. Maybe we can't do like maternity leave top-ups right away or something like that.
Right.
Maybe we need to wait until we're a little more established. So it's really about, yes, we all have the best intentions, I think, right? But
Mm-hmm.
really looking
Oh,
at it and
definitely.
saying, I think so. I think people do, and I really believe that. I think people do have a lot of the time the best intentions, but then it's sometimes hard to look back and say, oh, we really didn't implement that the way we wanted to, and it was a bit
Mm,
pie in the sky, you know.
mm,
But
mm.
that's okay. Like, what is real? What is real? And then figure out, create a policy that actually makes sense. That's obviously, compliant,
Mm-hmm.
and start there. Start with compliance and then nudge your way up in the most important ways.
And I think organizations really need to understand that these are the small things that allow for competitive advantage in today's market.
Mhm. Yes.
Tell us more about that. Like what are your thoughts on this? It's not just about checking those boxes, but being intentional about your policies, ESG, and your leadership practices. How do you see in the market how it literally or applicably gives a cutting edge to business?
Yeah. Uh, okay. So, I mean, at my core, I'm a business agility coach, business development coach. So, to me, we don't have any purpose. We can't
Mhm.
fulfill our mission and our purpose without profit. We just can't. We won't have a business,
That's
right?
fair.
And the more impact we have financially, it's a result of all those small things that we're doing in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's so important. Ange, can you repeat the question for me? I've just lost my train of
That's
thought.
okay. That's okay. My question was, I guess in short, what are some real-time examples of the applicability piece around ensuring that we have strong ESG, we're following the policies, procedures, our leadership are, kind of tweaking and elevating their skill sets. How
Mhm.
does that, I guess, what's the application case model in real industry perspectives? So what's the outcomes? Like what do companies get from investing their time and efforts in those things?
Oh yeah, right. Yes. We were talking about profit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So every single strategic advantage that you can have as a business right now in this climate is important.
Mhm.
But there's a big not to the point where it's going to overwhelm, the health and wellness of your team, right?
Goes back to balance.
This is where the balance comes into play for sure. And focusing on our highest priorities. So right now, the trends that I'm seeing is every business is a little bit scared. There's a bit of fear. I'm not going to
Mhm.
lie, quite a
Mhm.
lot actually. I'm underestimating. So there's a lot of fear right now, and the way that I'm seeing that expressed is that on the business development side is that salespeople are trying to sell everything under the sun and pushing their companies to the leading edge of what they're capable of and over the edge. And
Okay.
so what we're selling right now isn't what is in our core capabilities a lot of the time. And so that is stretching people thin because they're having to learn very fast,
Mm-hmm.
change systems, potentially scale up, scale down, adapt what they're doing to the marketplace. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So really, when you think about the social goals of your company, if health and wellness is something that you care about, and you should, because there's a lot of studies, as we know, around how the health and wellness affects performance of teams.
It's imperative. Full
100%.
stop. Full stop.
Yeah.
And I think it's understanding not just wellness as a whole for the organization under the social side of things, but rather what do my individual team members need? And
Mhm.
and I think that is a huge opportunity that again doesn't have to be gregarious or time consuming or all money consuming, but rather just genuinely understanding what are stress thresholds, because it's okay to have pressure, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's how we thrive and perform, but it's not okay as an organization to be conducive of stress, because to your point, that's where you're going to have a downturn in your performance, and your employees are your biggest assets. So it's really important, especially in this day and age, to be able to not monitor it, but be able to continuously take that pulse and
Yeah.
what I would call the GG, or the greater good.
Oh yeah, I love that. The GD, I'm going to use that.
Do it. I'm at it.
Right on. Yeah. So, all signs point to what is the greater good,
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what is the greater good in an organization as it relates to, sales and then delivering on clients' expectations,
Right.
right?
Right.
So really, being very intentional about knowing where your boundaries are
Mm-hmm.
on an organizational level, on a team level, and on an individual level. Sensing, we're doing a lot of sensing right now, talking to our team members, talking to our customers. So I would say, like, if you don't know where to start, that's where we have to start.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're circling back to empathy, right? So really getting to know your customers so you're not spiraling all different directions. It's great to have conversations. In the previous organization I worked with in my corporate job, we used to call it the hell yes and the hell no.
Tell me more about this. The hell yes and the hell no.
Where's your hell yes and hell no boundary line?
Okay.
Right? So when it comes to, if you're a bit in business development and you're thinking about a project, do you know the organization well enough to know what project is a hell yes, let's do it, and what is a hell no, we can't do it because it totally is overstepping our boundaries, right? Or, do we know we have resources in our back pocket? Have we planned for this so that we have the resources in our back pocket? So if that hell no maybe can become a hell yes, right?
And it sounds to me like it's all based on perspective, and a few things are coming out of there in the sense of skill sets for leadership. It's running with this sales example, it's ensuring that there's parallel between, again, the company core values and your team, not just your leaders understanding, okay, what does that mean? So if our company core value is customer success, that doesn't mean that we're going to promise them that's something outside of our boundaries, to your point, but rather, here's the realistic timeline. By the way, we're still having issues with logistics, and we're going to do XYZ for you. And it's just that simple, right? Like, it comes back down to what you said earlier. It doesn't have to be complex. And in today's society, when we dress things up, maybe an unpopular opinion here, but I find we're dressing things up to be bigger, or they look showier than what they actually are. It comes down to those essential human skills, is what I strongly believe.
Yeah. What is the reality? What is the truth? I always think about that. But it does come down when you're talking about the values earlier.
Yes.
The order of the values matters. So if you're trying to help your team make better decisions autonomously on their own, the order of those values matters. So the definition, how we define those values as a company matters. And then the order of them, because when I'm a manager, if I'm an employee and I've been told that I'm capable of making decisions in a specific area, what I should be doing is I should be going through those values and saying, is it profitable?
Right.
Is it aligned with customer experience? And it's
Yes.
literally like a checklist. And so whatever your number one value is what people are going to prioritize and emphasize.
I like that.
Thinking
I like
about
that. In hearing you, it's interchangeable in the sense that the order of your values is how you would prioritize your decision making based on your role. Yeah. I love this. As you're looking into the market, what type of skill sets do you feel that leaders should be on the lookout for 2024 to really double down? We've talked about ESG, we've talked about, the high level parameters of what that means in today's economy, and to be that cutting edge organization. How do we stay abreast of all of these leadership skills?
How do we stay abreast is a big question. Because there's so many, and there's hard skills and soft skills. So like when we're talking about like technical capacities, that is really, really, really important. I mean, obviously AI, right? Everyone's looking for that strategic advantage in terms of efficiency. And so really focusing on efficiency, that's, how do we use technology for efficiency? It's not necessarily investing in big giant systems and integrated solutions, but like, how can we take a nudge in the right direction to figure out if it works for us or if it makes sense? I think using like ChatGPT and generative AI is really going to be important to get to the next level in so many different industries and roles. Problem solving and critical thinking, negotiating. And I feel like negotiating is one, because we've been so focused, and negotiating is a hard skill, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how it's technically classified, but it's I think something that we've been working so much on, like, empathy and innovation, creativity, collaboration, communication. I've seen a lot of leaders focus on kind of those more soft skills, whereas negotiation right now to protect the people above and below you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So negotiating upward,
Mm-hmm.
negotiating downward, communicating effectively
Mm-hmm.
um, is so important right now. Negotiating with suppliers, negotiating with customers,
Mm-hmm.
negotiating lead times, and that whole skill set, I feel like is really needs to be emphasized this year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
that tracks for me, Erin. A lot of questions that are coming in from leaders, whether it be to augment our newsletter or our coaching clients or some of the clients that we're working with, a leadership cohort, is,
Mhm.
how do I manage expectations up? And, I know what I'm supposed to do to manage my team members, but how do I do that effectively? So I think it tracks in the sense of negotiation and the communication piece. Also curious, like I've read a few articles from Forbes, Harvard, et cetera, where one of the skill sets that they're talking about that's on the radar for 2024 in leadership is not just adaptability, but flexibility. So it's having that flexible
Mm.
mindset. I wanted to see if that's poking up in your area as well.
I mean, I'm trained as an agile coach. I've been Scrum Master, product owner, so I'm kind of I fairly embedded, I would say, in like agile frameworks. And
Mm,
so I think flexibility in terms of willingness to adapt makes a lot of, like, that's a really important mindset to have. But in learning a framework, learning how to use that agility, that adaptability in a way that's not going to create more work for everyone,
right,
right?
right.
It's compartmentalizing it, and really understanding, like, how does business agility or project agility really work?
Hmm.
And whether there's numerous different agile frameworks out there, and I would suggest dabbling in all of them to learn what works best for your business, because the whole point of agility isn't to you know to use like a rigid framework, a project management framework, and like, this is how we do it. And, no, it's really about what are the tools that you need to know whether something is going well, whether something needs to change. It's really about, like, looking, like we said, at the truth and reality of the situation, the
Hmm.
resources that you have in front of you, the people you have in front of you, these human people, and the technology.
Hmm.
And what do you have and what do you not have, and how can you make the best of what you do have, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah. So business
definitely.
agility, or agile frameworks for sure, I think I think everyone should learn something about it. And lean as well. Lean is also another great framework. Especially, see, agile works a little bit better when you're thinking about innovation and doing something a little different. And lean works better when you're looking to, minimize cost and waste.
Right.
So they're both useful in different contexts. So
Mm,
it just depends on, and I think it's important to use them together and
mhm,
separately.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. I see you in the sense of it's a bit of an oxymoron to take on an agile mindset and be fixed with regards to the way that you operate.
Mhm.
Rather, it's looking at it from the perspective of, okay, what are the models out there that are relevant to our business demographics, and what can we take from them in today's
Mhm.
market and looking strategically forwards?
Mhm.
That's
Yep.
amazing. I could talk to you
Yep.
forever, Erin. Seriously.
Oh my gosh. Ditto. Ditto.
So, Erin, what's on the horizon for the Positivist Group?
Positivist Group. Sorry. I
Positivist
know it's a
Group.
tongue twister.
It really is, and I practiced beforehand too.
That's
Um,
okay.
Tell us what's on the horizon for 2024.
Oh, yeah. So we've got a very exciting project in the accessibility space that we like to take a very practical approach to what we do. So obviously we've got the consulting practice where we go in, we help, manufacturers, professional services, government, lots of different types of organizations, farms, working with a few generational family farms, which has been amazing.
Oh, beautiful.
And yeah, just lovely, lovely. But on the project side, we have a specific project that I'm very excited about. And it's part corporate training, employee training, e-learning specifically, and part marketing platform.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so what the goal of the project is to help people with disabilities just navigate the world in a little bit of an easier way, accessing retail stores, restaurants, things like that. So we're starting in my hometown in Carleton Place. We're running the pilot in Carleton Place in Almont, which is another nearby town. And pilot's launching in August, and we're right in the middle of research and development right now. Our e-learning platform is underway, and the training is underway. And we're going to be reaching out to hundreds, hopefully thousands of individuals with disabilities to ask them specific questions on how they can be served best by retailers and restaurants and other types of brick and mortar service-oriented businesses. Right? So it's for brick and mortar service oriented businesses. It's a customer service training and certification process. So we train their employees through e-learning how to serve customers with many like intersectional types of disabilities. We teach the employer, what they're doing now, where are they now? What's the benchmark? What's the nudge to the next level?
Yes.
And so then they can start implementing. And then we certify the business. We go on site, we certify the business. We do things like counting the number of steps, measuring the doorway, measuring the bathroom. Is it AODA compliant? Probably not for a lot of these businesses. A lot of them are grandfathered in. There's no way for, Carleton Place is an old town. There's no way for all those businesses to become AODA compliant in a current sense, in terms of physical accessibility. However, they can do a little more than they are now through the power of people. And so then the marketing platform, once they're certified, they become part of a searchable database where people with disabilities can search and find businesses that they're comfortable going to, depending on what their disability is. Yeah.
Beautiful. I absolutely love what you're doing for the service industry. And I'm sure it's going to grow, definitely. So you'll have to keep us updated. Yep.
It's called Train to Help, and it'll be traintohelp.org will be launching in a couple of weeks.
That's amazing. And how can people reach out to you directly for more information?
They can go on the positivist.ca website. That's positivist.ca. They can email me at erin@positivist.ca. That's ERIN@positivist.ca. Or I'm on most social platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc. at Erin Patchell.
Fantastic. It's been so amazing to speak with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Thanks so much, Ange. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuity Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.